We built this small house off-grid in the Australian countryside, and here's our story. We were actually living in Japan before we moved to Australia. My wife and I were expecting a baby, and we decided that we wanted to have the baby in Australia. It was also a good opportunity for me to quit my job in Japan and focus on making music and recording full-time. We were able to build this small house on my wife's parents' property, which was already established off-grid. And off-grid living usually includes solar power, rainwater, and sewage. And because the essentials were already set up, we were able to build a small house on the back of the property. And if you stick to the end of the video, I'll be sharing the cost to build our small house in the countryside in our situation. The location of the house was originally a caravan with a shelter. It was usually used for guests, but I would record music in there as well. Initially, we thought about changing the small shack into a one-bedroom studio, but as my wife started drawing out the plans, we decided that it had to be bigger and more space for a family. So before we could actually start building, we had to take the shelter apart and also take the caravan away. So here you could see us using the tractor to take away some of the really heavy stuff like the cement block that was used as a step. And removing all the heavy pillars and everything that came with the caravan took roughly 2 days to move everything. So after the caravan and the shelter was taken away, we were able to start building the house. And in total, the house took about a year to make. Here's just a progression of photos that my wife took every month of the building. And you can kind of see the progression of the house by the month. And because I'm not a builder, I was just helping out as a laborer with anything that needed help. So thanks to my wife for taking these photos. Most of the materials that were used on the house were recycled to lower the cost of building. So all the windows, the doors, and the floors were all recycled from demolitions and other local finds. So as you can see here, that's all recycled, and the house still needs to be sanded and painted and a few other things, but I think it's a great little house. So this is a bit of footage of us working on the weatherboard, which is the outside of the house. And once the outside was finished, the next thing was to start on the inside. This is a bit of footage of the inside of the house as well as the front and how it looked before the house was completed. So this is just a quick before and after photo. So there's definitely some really cool things about living off-grid in the countryside, because when you live off-grid, you're really living off the land and the weather. And things like electricity, water, and gas is something that isn't really connected to the town. So it's very self-sustained and sometimes scary when it doesn't rain for a while and becomes a drought, or when it's too cloudy, we don't get any of the sun. But I think it's worth it because it feels like we're living off the land. And now I'm going to show you guys how we get our basic necessities, which include electricity, gas, and water. So this is where we actually get our water stored. We have 2 big tanks that store a lot of water. Basically, when it rains, our roof catches the rainwater and then it all gets stored into these tanks. Unless there's a drought, we're pretty good on water, but I'm going to show you guys if we're in a situation where we do have a drought and we run out of all the water that we have that we get from the rain, I'll show you guys our backup water, and that's the dam. If there's ever a drought, this is the hose that we use for the dam water, and all the dam water that's connected to this hose we use for gardening and outside stuff that we don't drink. But if we're desperate and we need to drink it, we'll use the dam water. But it's a really good way of saving the good water. So this is the solar panel that we use to get our electricity. It powers the whole house, and it's really good when it's a sunny day. So it catches a bunch of electricity, and yeah, that's how we're able to power the house. And actually, to get our hot water, we have a hot water solar system up there on the roof that catches the sunlight and makes the water really hot. So it's essentially heating the water for free. So we have a washing machine that we use in the back house, but this is what we use for drying our clothes. We just use the sun. We don't use any dryers here like in Japan. So this is what we use for gas. We use these gas tank bottles, and we swap it out every 2 months or so. I think a lot of people use them for barbecues and camping, but this is what we use for the house. So we're not connected into the town for gas. We just have our own bottles that we use that we swap out every few months. I think one of the best things about being off-grid is the fact that you can have so much space to do stuff, including having animals and having your own chicken, free-range chickens, having healthy free-range eggs, as well as having gardens. We have oranges, avocados, passion fruit, lemons and limes, so many vegetable and fruits that we can grow ourselves that don't have sprays, or fruit and vegetables that taste really real. That's something awesome about living off-grid here in the Australian countryside. And I think a lot of people are always wondering whether they should live in the countryside or try to live off-grid. And I hope that in this video you can kind of be inspired or get ideas about moving to the countryside or whatever country you're in. Obviously, different countries will have different situations and the cost of living and so many other factors. But I think that I want to share my personal story and my experience of living in the countryside through these videos and future videos to come. And I definitely want to make more videos about the cost of living and things like that that might be interesting for people who are looking into living off-grid or living in the countryside. So definitely let me know in the comments what type of videos you guys want to see as well in my personal situation. And one thing that I wanted to say in this video about living in the countryside is that personally for me, it wasn't a very easy transition moving from the city, because I grew up mostly in the city in Japan and also America as well. I lived in the suburbs of America. So moving to a countryside from nothing was a pretty big deal. And obviously I've had family members in Japan who've lived in the countryside, so I've experienced the countryside in different parts of the world, but Australia was a bit different as well and had its own trials and errors, because there's things that I had to get used to, things like bugs and snakes and goannas, and obviously not everything will attack you, but just to be used to the types of animals that's around was something that I had to get used to, as well as just the humidity of things and putting stuff away, because if you don't put it away after it gets wet or damp, it's going to get moldy, and that's something that I never really even had to think about living in California. So before I end this video, I want to tell you guys how much the whole thing cost. So now I'm going to tell you the cost of how much everything costs from the start to the end to build this off-grid house. So the total cost of everything, including the materials, the labor, and everything, was 80,000 AUD, which is about, give or take, 60,000 US dollars. And obviously every situation is going to be different, because we were in a situation where we used a lot of recycled goods, as well as the labor was basically my wife's family. It was her brother and her father that built most of it, so that definitely lowered the cost because they weren't charging the full amount that a laborer or a builder would normally charge. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll be making more videos about off-grid living, so I'll see you in the next one. Bye.